No one, not a single person found the pieces. The story remains completely hidden. This is what Scott Cawthon, the creator of Five Nights at Freddy's, had to say in a Steam post about the mysteries of Fnaf 4, and how the community had failed to unveil the true story of the game. This one game has been left unsolved from its release to now, and I think I solved it. Using real-world psychology on the frontal lobe and what happens to it when experiencing some type of trauma, I believe we can solve the most important character in all of Five Nights at Freddy's, the bite victim. To fully understand the bite victim and his trauma, we need to understand the brain itself. The human brain is made up of two hemispheres, left and right, and four distinct lobes. The only one necessary for this discussion is the frontal lobe, so I'll omit the others. The frontal lobe is responsible for various brain activities. It's where we get our executive functions, our working memory, some of our muscle movements, our basic reasoning and decision-making, language production, and our personalities. The frontal lobe does a lot, and a lot of it is split up between four distinct sections. There's the prefrontal cortex, that's the big part in front. The premotor and motor cortices that are associated with muscle movements, these are located near the back of the frontal lobe. And finally, a small section located on the left hemisphere of the brain holds Broca's area. And I want to focus on Broca's area, as it holds the first piece of the puzzle of the bite victim's broken mind. Broca's area has a very specific function, as it's where we get the production of speech. In the 1800s, Frenchman Pierre-Paul Broca observed individuals who suffered damage to the same area of the brain, and they suffered from extremely similar symptoms. They had the inability to produce cohesive speech. It's not that they couldn't learn new words or that they didn't understand words. No, the problem is that they couldn't put full sentences together. They had lost their fluency. One person was reported to only be able to say one word, tan, while another person could only cycle through the same 5 words. When you suffer from this disorder, known as Broca's aphasia, you can no longer form long sentences, and you often leave out words like conjunctions, or simplify the sentences to get your point across. If you wanted to say that you were hungry, for instance, you could probably only describe it as, "I want food," if not simpler than that. So we have a condition caused by damage to the frontal lobe that leaves a person only able to talk in short or simplified sentences. And I want you to keep this fact in the back of your mind because it will be important later. But first, let's continue dissecting the bite victim's mind. And to do this, let's hear about a man that suffered a similar fate himself. In 1848, a railroad foreman known as Phineas Gage was caught in an accident. An explosion sent a 3-foot metal rod straight into his frontal lobe, but he did survive it. Before this accident, Gage was known as just a really nice guy. He was on top of his work, a leader. His employers had nothing bad to say about him. However, after the accident, he was a completely different person. He was unpleasant to be around and an unreliable worker. Once a charming fellow, Gage was now vulgar and crass. In other words, he did a complete 180 in personality. The story of Phineas Gage suggests something crucial about the bite victim's character. But before I get into that, we have one final piece of psychology to tackle, and I promise this is the last of it. There is a form of dementia that affects both the frontal and temporal lobes, named accordingly as frontotemporal dementia. This strain of dementia shares many symptoms between the two lobes, but I picked out the ones that are clearly frontal lobe related. These consist of a loss of empathy and being less sensitive to others' feelings, a lack of judgment, hesitant speech resulting in 2-word sentences, tremors, twitching, muscle weakness, inappropriate laughing, and trouble walking. The frontal lobe is also known for seizures when it has suffered damage, where the victim can have abnormal behavior like screaming, laughing, convulsing in spasms, difficulty speaking, and personality changes. Now, with all of this evidence, based on the psychology of what happens to a damaged frontal lobe, we can now put it all together. And I want to start with the dementia and seizures, as I think they answer the first clue to solving the bite victim's character. But first, consider liking this video and subscribing so Golden Freddy doesn't bite your frontal lobe off. And while you're down there, you might as well leave a comment on your thoughts so far, or Andrew will become canon to the games! Ah! Alright, back to lobotomies. To start, I want to make one thing clear. The bite victim is Golden Freddy. Now that may seem obvious, after all the bite victim was bitten by Fredbear, which we know to be Golden Freddy, but I'm not saying he's just possessing Golden Freddy. No, what I'm claiming is that Golden Freddy is an avatar for the bite victim. Every single time we see Golden Freddy, it's the bite victim manifesting himself as the animatronic. This of course contrasts with other characters like the Core 4, who are souls trapped in the animatronics. My evidence for this lies in how Golden Freddy is depicted in every game, but specifically in Ultimate Custom Night. You see, Golden Freddy in that game is depicted to be convulsing. Many attribute this to a springlock incident, as it's extremely comparable to William Afton's springlock. However, I disagree that Golden Freddy is being shown to springlock someone, and that is for one reason. Golden Freddy is in suit mode. We know from the Fnaf 3 tapes that springlock suits have two distinct modes, animatronic and suit. Fredbear is in animatronic mode when the bite victim is killed, but when we see Golden Freddy at any other time, he's slumped over in suit mode. Why would Golden Freddy be slumped over in suit mode if he springlocked the child possessing him? If Golden Freddy really did springlock the bite victim, then he would be walking around like the other animatronics, but Golden Freddy never even stands in the games. He is unable to walk. Instead, he teleports. And why does he teleport? Because he's an apparition. He isn't really there. He's a manifestation of the bite victim. If we look at Golden Freddy, not as an animatronic, but as the bite victim, we see symptoms of frontotemporal dementia and frontal lobe seizures. Golden Freddy can't walk. He twitches and convulses. He laughs and he screams. These are all symptoms that the bite victim suffered before he died. And speaking of death, I do want to discuss the bite victim's death, but first let's go back to our other psychological evidence, specifically Broca's aphasia, because if it wasn't obvious, short and simplified sentences like, "it's me," are usually tied to Golden Freddy, but that isn't what I'm trying to prove. Instead, we need to look into the survival logbook. For those who don't know, the survival logbook is a lore-heavy activity book housing two spirits that communicate within the book. One uses faded text, and the other alters text on the pages. Altered text is considered to be the bite victim, and Broca's aphasia proves this, but it also proves something else. You see, the main reason the survival logbook is so lore-heavy is that the two spirits reveal their names within the pages. But whenever we have tried to solve the name of the bite victim, there's always a slight problem. Faded text asks altered text a couple of questions throughout the book, where the answer to the question holds a clue to solving one of their names. Using a word search, theorist Hyperdroid came to the conclusion that altered text is named Dave. However, the one argument against that name is that not all the answers to the questions make sense. For questions like, "Does he still talk to you?" the answer is presumably, "I can hear sounds," which isn't exactly answering the question, at least not directly. But with the knowledge of Broca's aphasia, we now know that the less than adequate answers are actually caused by the bite victim's trauma. So psychology of frontal lobe trauma has shown us the truth that Golden Freddy is a projection of the bite victim's mind, why Golden Freddy says it's me, and that the bite victim is very likely named Dave. However, there's still that last and crucial piece about frontal lobotomies that gives us the final piece of the puzzle, and that is that Phineas Gage proves that Dave the bite victim is none other than the Vengeful Spirit, or his actual title, the one you should not have killed. So to start, I've always felt that the bite victim made little sense to be the Vengeful Spirit, as it wasn't in his nature to be vengeful. However, Phineas Gage and his personality change shows us that the bite victim can go from a terrified and cowering little kid to one that's not scared, but angry, one that doesn't cry, but fights. Now, the bite victim being vengeful does bring up a question. Why wouldn't he be seeking vengeance towards his brother? After all, his brother killed him, right? He is the one you shouldn't have killed, so is the murderer not Mike? Well, I left out something crucial about Phineas Gage's story. He survived. Not for a little while. He survived years. 12 to be exact. But he didn't just survive. His personality returned to normal. And it's this fact that the human brain can live without the frontal lobe that suggests something sinister. What makes the bite victim the one you should not have killed? To answer this, we must look at one final piece of evidence from this franchise that sold it for me. And it lies in the books! In Fnaf's Goosebumps equivalent, Fazbear Frights, there is an animatronic known as the Stitch Wraith. Similar to the logbook, the Stitch Wraith has two spirits within it, Jake and Andrew. Jake is a good spirit who is helping Andrew pilot the Stitch Wraith. Andrew specifically controls the whole animatronic but cannot see. Jake can see and is the eyes for Andrew. This parallels a line in the logbook where the bite victim says he can't see. We first meet Andrew in the story The Man in Room 1280, where he is keeping the burned corpse of William Afton from dying. This story is obviously meant to be a parallel of UCN. Eventually, Andrew ends up in the Stitch Wraith after this story and tells Jake how much he hates William. What's strange is that Andrew can't remember how he died. All this to say, Andrew is a parallel to the bite victim, and his story answers what we are missing. The bite victim may not remember how he died. In fact, the parallels to Andrew suggest this is true. But if this is true, why would he blame William for his death? Well, although he may not remember how he died, he may remember the final words his brother said to him, an apology, making amends. But he'd also remember what his father says to him before he flatlines. I will push you back together. A promise. A promise possibly broken as the bite victim remained dead. Or a suggestion that the last speaker, his father, pulled the plug. Whatever we, or he, believes can be up for debate, but I think there's a key thing we keep missing about the Vengeful Spirit. The one you should not have killed is a title the Vengeful Spirit gives himself. After all, he created the torment for William, and the way some of the animatronics speak to William isn't as other spirits, but as speaking on behalf of the Vengeful Spirit. The mediocre melodies are literally spoken through by the Vengeful Spirit. If he's puppeteering all of these characters, then he's making them refer to him by a title he gave himself. When it comes down to it, the Vengeful Spirit himself believes he was the one William shouldn't have killed. And this next claim might be crazy, but it's possible if he forgot how he died, he would incorrectly label himself as a victim of Afton. So let's recap everything we've discussed. Using psychology of how the frontal lobe reacts to severe trauma, we discovered that the bite victim went through memory loss, seizures, he lost the production of full sentences, and finally his personality changed completely. All this evidence led me to the conclusion that the bite victim uses Golden Freddy as a projection to depict his suffering, and that he is the vengeful spirit of Ultimate Custom Night. Now, I made a lot of bold claims in this video, so if you enjoyed it, consider liking and subscribing. If you want to see more just like it, consider watching the video on screen now, as it probably answers another part of the lore. And if you hated this whole theory, leave a comment telling me how bad it was. Thanks for watching.